Hi, welcome to Sacred Enzyme. I'm Stacy. I hope you're doing well today. So I want to start out this video. We'll just dive right in. I'm going to play a snippet of the video called The Search for Odin by Robert Sepher. He's an anthropologist. You can find him on YouTube, and I'll link this video down below. Here we go.
Zeus, whose thunderbolt is symbolically identical to the mighty hammer of Thor, the god of thunder and lightning in Norse mythology, which now leads us back to Odin, the terrible one, and not just the archetype of the one-eyed deity, but before he was bestowed with symbolic occult attributes, was there really a man before the myths and legends? And if so, where did he come from?
Yes, I'll eventually work a different method out for this, but right now this is the way we're doing it. We're grassroots, baby. This is real life stuff here. I've seen a character that kind of looks like this guy, but he has curly, bushy hair, and he has a beard. Yeah, kind of more like that. More like, but not that hat.
Historian Thor Heyerdahl of Kon-Tiki fame has garnered considerable evidence to support the theory concerning ancient migrations into Scandinavia from the region generally known as the Caucasus and steppes. Heyerdahl speculated that Odin, commonly thought of today as a mythical Norse god, was a historical person who founded the Norwegian, Swedish royal dynasty. Heyerdahl first began forming his hypothesis after visiting the petroglyphs of Gobustan, an ancient cave dwelling found 30 miles west of Baku, capital of Azerbaijan, which is famous for its rock carvings, some of which date back at least 5,000 years. The sketches of sickle-shaped boats carved into these rocks closely resemble rock carvings found in his own native Norway. Determined to prove that early man could have crossed the ocean in reed boats, Thor Heyerdahl sailed a reed boat 3,270 sea miles in 57 days in 1970. Years later, he stumbled upon correlations between Scandinavia and the Caucasus, noting that Norwegian mythology tells that the Nordic god Odin moved with his people to Norway from a land called Aser, whose description matches the Scythian region east of the Caucasus Mountains and the Black Sea. Is this story mythology, or could it have been based, at least in part, on actual history? Scythian is one of the names of the Aryans that lived all across the steppes, which is the name of a large area of flat, unforested grassland stretching from Mongolia and Russia to southeastern Europe, all the way into parts of Hungary. Incidentally, Hungary gets its name from the Huns, another tribe that entered Europe from Central Asia and the Caucasus,
from the Draco,
who conquered the
dragons.
Alans and various other Scythian tribes, which are all names for ancient Aryans, which entered Europe in several waves from east to west.
East to
west. A large
west.
part of European history involves migrations from the east,
Asia,
such as Catalonia, which derives its names from Goth Alania, land of the Goths and Alans, which were Aryans, an Rh-negative dense population in present-day Barcelona, Spain, or the Celts, which according to Irish annals descend from the Scythians, who allegedly descend from Magog, the son of Japheth, a son of Noah, whose ark settled on Ararat, a mountain in the Caucasus. Both biblical history and pagan mythology seem to be supported by the archaeological and genetic evidence, even if it's downplayed in the media. The Search for Odin is the project title of Thor Heyerdahl's last series of archaeological excavations, which took place in Russia. His intention was to prove the validity of Icelandic sagas written in the 13th century about the Norse royal dynasties and the pre-Christian Norse gods. Written in Old Norse by the Icelandic poet and historian Snorri Sturluson, the original legends date back several centuries earlier and concern the history of the Norwegian kings from a mythical prehistoric age where the kings of Norway descend from this royal house of Sweden. In the initial stanzas of the poem, Asgard is the capital of Asaland, a section of Asia east of the Don River flowing into the Black Sea. Odin is the chief of Asgard. From there he conducts and dispatches military expeditions to all parts of the world, never losing a battle. As the story goes, Odin led a section of the Aesir to the north, looking for new lands on which to settle, up the Don River to Saxland, which is Germany, and then to Scandinavia. Large portions of the saga are clearly mythical, as Odin is a sorcerer, speaks only in verse, has a ship that can be rolled up like a tablecloth when not used, and relies on 2 talking ravens
to
gather intelligence.
Right?
That said, findings published this week in the journal Nature reported data from a genetic study of 442 Viking remains from a burial site dating between 2400 BC and 1600 AD, which resulted in headlines such as, quote, "New Viking DNA testing shows nearly all of them were part Asian."
How about that?
Of course, when we're talking about over 4,000 years ago, Asia takes on a completely different context.
I'm going to prove it.
As there were blonde and red-headed Chinese mummies that predate the arrival of modern East Asian phenotypes by over 1,000 years.
Amazing.
Asian, in this context, means Aryan, or bearded Caucasoid, rather than Mongoloid, who to a large degree lack facial hair. My apology for using an outdated term, but I want to be clear to my subscribers, as this distinction is not properly explained in most of the mainstream articles. In a statement, Esk Willerslev, the lead author and director of the Lundbeck Foundation Geogenetics Center at the University of Copenhagen, said, quote, "This study changes the perception of who a Viking actually was. No one could have predicted these significant gene flows into Scandinavia from Southern Europe and Asia happened before and during the Viking Age." I think it's safe to say that Dr. Willerslev has never heard of Thor Heyerdahl and seems oblivious to any archaeological conclusions held from before World War II. Do these genetic findings conclusively prove that Odin was a flesh and blood chieftain that led a mass migration into Scandinavia? No, not directly. But in the context of this DNA study, I'd like to read a brief passage from the Encyclopedia Britannica, 9th edition, volume 2, page 594, under the topic Asgard. Quote, "The historical explanation of Asgard, as given by the early northern authorities, is that in the country called Asaheim, to the east of Tanigvis, the Tanis or the Don, in Asia, there was a city, Asgard, in which ruled a great chief known as Odin or Woden, who presided over religious sacrifices which were held there. He and other Sarmatians or Caucasian chiefs left their settlement on the Black Sea and wandered forth in search of new and independent homes, to the north and west to the primary Asiatic seat of their tribes. Odin, foreknowing that he and his posterity would occupy the northern lands, left Asaheim with a vast multitude of followers and wandered first westward to Gardarike, which is Russia, and afterwards to Saxland, North and East Germany. After some time he proceeded northward, till at length he came to Malar Lake in Sweden, where they settled at a place known as Sigtuna, the present Uppsala. His 12 dire, or chief priests, in the course of time founded states for themselves, and everywhere set up the laws and usages which they had followed in Asaheim. Here we have a historical link with the mythic story of Odin's halls in Asgard and his 12 attendants, Aesir. It is not improbable that the traditionary records of such earlier migrations had lingered among the people dwelling on the shores of the Euxine, for it is certain that, whatever may be the age of Odin's appearance in Scandinavia, previous waves of population had passed from the Black Sea to the Baltic and cleared the way for the reception of that highest phase of Aryan civilization brought to Northern Europe by Odin and his followers. My name is Robert Sepher. I'm an anthropologist. My published work is available on Amazon, as well as through various other major book outlets. They make a great gift. If you would like to support,
they do make a great gift. I have some of Robert's books. So what do you guys think about that? So he's an anthropologist, and he says that the search for Odin came from Asia. So, you know, I'm going back and doing my ancestry right now, and I have a family member that I found on my German side, which is the Miller side, and I think it's like my third great grandfather, and he totally looks Asian. He totally does. It's not a far fetch. It's not a far fetch at all, because my family always thought we had Native American genetics, and we never really questioned it because they look Native American. My grandmother, and even the Randolphs, you can look at the famous ones that were in Continental Congress and all of those. I mean, Jefferson, he had more of the red hair and the fair eyes, like the Irish part. But the Randolph, we have these really dark circles around it. We have dark eyes. I don't know how to explain it. It's like the skin around our eyes just always looks dark, and you always look tired. It's almost like raccoon eyes. And everybody in my family has it, and they all have a stain to their skin. They have like a, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I really don't. I really don't. I just thought they were Native American. Maybe like an olive undertone or something like that. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but they have dark eyes. But we always thought they were Native American. But when I'm going back and looking, and it's clear the eyes and everything it's Asian. It's Asian. And you know, when my daughter was born, when she first started talking, she told me I wasn't her mother. She told me her mother was from China. And she told her father too. She just screamed and hollered and told us that we were not her parents, that her mom and dad were from China. And she kept cutting her hair too, just like this. She would cut her and her brother, they would get the scissors and cut her hair off. I mean, they were not allowed to have anything like that. And literally, I would hide scissors on top of the refrigerator, in the cabinets, and everything. I don't even know where these kids would do like a magic trick and pull the scissors out of thin air. And then here she'd come with her haircut. She said she was cutting it like Nancy Grace. But you know, it's in our ancestry. We're here at this time right now, and you know, I think that the World Mother goes back to Lemuria, and she was Asian. And you know, I've had some people say that that there's a group of people like from Rigel or something, and there's some other groups throughout the solar system, but there's a huge Asian presence in the solar system. You know, in this the super space programs, not only are the Germans, they have and this might be what she's talking about, is that they have a colony called New Berlin on Mars, and it's German. It's German. It's a Nazi colony. It's the Nazis. And so, you know, when they talk about going to Mars, that's what they're doing. That's who they're working with. They're working with Germans that are, they have a big presence in Mars, but also Japan does too, because they knew how to make clone bodies. They know how to make bodies. They can, so, you know, you can fracture out these kids that have certain bloodlines. You can create alters out of them, and then you can program these alters to do specific tasks because they can pass through stargates. It's just like if you take a chip out of your phone. Like if you have a mouse and you take the chip out, the mouse is still the mechanics behind it, right? But the chip is what makes it work. So the mouse is an avatar, and the chip is the soul. That is the essence. That is our spark of light that comes from God, source. So that's our chip. So basically, they take regrow our chip from a slightly tiny piece of this chip from the main chip, and they keep taking and growing and creating another chip. And they take that chip and they animate it into another avatar suit. And because these souls have special life paths that they've had in the past eons, they have a certain frequency to their soul, and because they're born into certain family lines. And the reason is that certain family genetics can hold more frequency than others. And so some higher evolved beings might choose to incorporate, they have to incorporate into these family lines, because these old family lines knew about the mysteries. And so they try to keep their Nephilim genetics. Just like my family, we come from these giant people. And my guardian is a giant. I've seen him before. We also have the fairy folk. And that's on my mom's dad's side. Their last name is Royal. And they go all the way back to before William the Conqueror. There's a place that that they came from. Oh, and they ended up, they're from like the Fitz family, which is funny because my dad's side, the Randolphs, they're related to the Fitz family too. And then on my grandmother, she goes all the way back to the Donald clan. Or no, that's my dad's side. I take that back. They go all the way back to Clan Donald, which is one of the first ones, which go back to the kings of Alba. And the Alba kings, okay, this is the other thing that I learned, is that Remus and Romulus, that were suckled by the she-wolf, right? And we had the myth about Amelius and, was it Numitor, right? We had that thing. Well, they talk about Amelius, and Edgar Casey talks about Amelius in his books. So was he channeling Amelius from this time? Amelius that was, you know, he was trying to take over during this time period, the Albion kings. Well, it looks like her name is Rhea, R-H-E-A, but her name is Ray. They're not pronouncing it right. So we had Ray Silva. So which Silva means illuminated. So it's like Silver Ray. So, you know, we're talking about genetic lines here. And so she had Remus and Romulus. So she was Nephilim bloodline because she had twins. And that's the one thing that the World Mother has told me. Everything is twins. That we're twins with Venus. That we're in this magnetic polarity with Venus because it's our twin. It's kind of like a trauma twin almost. They talk about trauma twins in these SSP groups, but it's the same concept. It's where you're held in a figure 8 pattern with polarity. The polar opposite causes a magnetic conjugation, implosion type thing that happens. And this is why when a spirit's around, you'll get a chill because of this thing that happens, and I can't remember the term for it. It's called magnetic, it's not implosion. Anyway, it'll come to me. I'll have to look it back up. It's in a book that I've been reading, and it totally makes sense. This is why she says everything is twins. Just like we have a North Pole and a South Pole, because everything is holding the grid intact. So everything that is bad eventually works itself out, because you cannot go against the laws of the universe, no matter how hard you try. That's why this is why she comes back every 26,000 years, because her timeline can't be changed. You can't change her timeline. It's fixed. We're the only place that exists in time. Here. Like my brother said, when you leave this physical body, that you can go to the past, you can go to the future, you can go back and relive your lives. And he also told me that he had went back to his childhood self when he was like 10 years old, and that he was with our mom and dad in this other reality. And I was like, okay, well, how is that possible if mom and dad are not dead? He said, because it's another version of mom and dad, except it's a more perfect version of mom and dad. They don't have any bad habits. Dad never drank. Mom, she grew up, without having lost her father at a young. She didn't have all of these traumatic abandonment, things happening and her life being out of control. She didn't live in trauma response. And it was this perfected version of my parents that he was in this timeline with. And he told me that he was reliving, he was going through his life there and seeing what his options were. And, I just thought that was nice. that he chose to be with our parents again. But you know what? He was always very much family-oriented person. He was so loving. But you know, we have these ancestral patterns, and it doesn't matter what we look like, because we all came from the stars. And you know, so many people are like, oh, this one came first and this color skin came first. That is so elementary school. I mean, really, it is. We're so way past that. That is, if you're in that spot, this channel is not for you, for sure, for sure. Because we were just different hybrid beings that came from source, and it was the primal sound field that shaped our form. And most of us were these lion, cat, dog beings, canine beings, and we came from Lyra. But there was a war because we went into this polarity experiment, so it had to start somewhere. So it started with the Lyrans, and so they went into a fear response because they were a peaceful people, and they were trying to just live in peace. You know, they were harmonious. So, you know, they started going across the solar system. They were in Venus, you know, and I think that there's still some, you know, family, or what do you call that, progenies from that group that are still there and on Venus. But Venus is not like it used to be, because Venus almost got destroyed. So it's not the same habitation. So then we get Earth here. You know, they came to Earth too, and we had wars all throughout the solar system. They came here. This is where we get beautiful Venice and all of these places from. This, you know, the Sphinx, that's the she-wolf. That's the world mother. The face is Asian. You know, it does look Chinese. I did see some information the other day where they were talking about some of the oldest. Oh, it's this one young guy who is an SSP, but he has recall. And see, this is what I think SSPs are. Okay, this is what I feel like when people are talking about being a super soldier. What they're talking about is that they come from one of these bloodline families, and what's happened is because of their genetics, they can go through stargates. So like I was explaining to you about the mouse, you know, the keyboard mouse and the chip that goes in it. What's happened is the natural order of things were corrupted, and that was when Stargate 12 was destroyed, where their connection to the Lyran solar system was lost. Okay, this is why they started marking everything all over the world pointing north, like the red ochre people. Red ochre is hematite, and it is magnetically polarized to the northern direction. So they would know that when they died, when their soul came out of their physical body upon death, that they would be magnetized to go north, because you had to go out the north celestial north pole from then on out to get back to Venus or wherever it was you were going. And they lined the bodies up east and west, usually, these older groups. They were orientated east-west, and they were covered in red ochre. Now, there are a lot of buildings that are old buildings that are all over the earth that are covered in red ochre. Now, the ones that are super, super tall, like mountains with temples on the top, or pyramids, very tall ones that are painted red, those were the old healing temples from Lyra. There's some in South America. There should be some in China. You know, in these areas where these original groups were. There should be some like in Alaska and California, probably off the coast of California, and I'm sure there's definitely some in Maui, because the Hawaiian Islands is what's left of the top of those mountains of Lemuria, because they had, you know, these earthquakes and volcano eruptions, which they're having volcano eruptions right now. Because the world mother's back. Mama's home. Mama's home. So, I mean, you know, and, you know, I'm still trying to see what her body looks like. But from now, at this point in time, I still am at the conclusion that she is a she-wolf, because of the fur that she's covered with. Now, maybe she just has a little tiny body. But it's interesting, the more I'm studying about these groups, these original groups that come from Odin, when I see their illustrations, They are all wearing a loincloth. And I'm like, what in the world? You can't even make this stuff up. It's so weird. So with that, when you come and find me, I'll be here because we're living in the past, present, and the future all at the same time. Don't forget to get outside today. Put your feet in the grass. It's going to be a beautiful day. Don't forget to give thanks to our Heavenly Father and Mother Earth. So thanks for watching Sacred Enzyme, and I hope to catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.